Hello and welcome back to the Herbal Entrepreneur Conference. I'm Yolanda Joy, and today I'm really excited to introduce Talal Al Hamad, who is the genius herbalist behind Urban Apothecary. Talal, I'm so glad that you could join us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it truly is. I'm really your website caught my eye initially. It was the menu of herbs that you had on your website and the way that you run your whole herbal business. But what we're going to talk about today is the behind the scenes, how to start up a clinical herbal practice. But before we do dive into those tips, I would love it if you could give a bit of an introduction about your journey as an herbalist and how you really started Urban Apothecary.
Yeah, certainly. So I get that question a lot, and I'm happy to answer it today officially. The every I find to my experience, most herbalist journeys in terms of how they got to be an herbalist tends to be one of frustration in terms of, oh, I had a health issue, nobody could help me with, sort of thing. Um, and then so that's essentially what happened to me. Like I'm originally from Kuwait, and I moved here when I was about like in 2002, so a while back. And within a year or two, I started to develop all these conditions, anaphylactic allergic shocks, immune conditions to Western society that I never had before. Out of complete frustration, I essentially, when the medical system failed me, got into a journey of, okay, how can I help myself? You start eating better, you start getting into the organic foods or the health food store, you get a little bit of results, and that cascaded the domino effect of, okay, I'm going to start going down this path and get formal education and what have you. So in a long story short, essentially, it was more so I needed to help myself through various conditions, which I no longer have anymore, thankfully. It just kind of went from there. It started out being self-care, friends and family, and you'll just see it bubble out. And that's generally what I see with most practitioners, where it started out with, hey, that was my shelf of tinctures, and now it's like that's my entire room of tinctures, and I need another room. So that's kind of how it usually happens.
Wow. Yeah, I think that is a very relatable story and just like how it grows from there. And so, like, at what point did you realize that it was no longer just like a personal hobby with friends and family and it kind of blossomed into an actual business?
Yeah, I mean, it 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 really just for me, it was symbolic. I had a specific cabinet that once that was full, it just kind of like cracked. I was like, oh, this is no longer a hobby. This is cabinet's exploding. So for me, it was that. But I think in terms of I don't really think of it I wouldn't recommend folks think of it in terms of income, or like if I hit a certain target X amount of dollars, now I'm a professional. It's more, it kind of gradually happens. Let it be an organic process. If you already have something else on the side, integrate them together, marry them together, and then eventually the herbalism will take precedent if it should, or if it's meant to be, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's great advice because like it's just kind of going about it in a more relaxed way so that you give it the space to blossom if it's ready to, but like without putting your pressure on to really all that stress to make it work. It's just letting it happen when it's supposed to happen, and that's a really useful perspective to have, I think, when starting any venture, especially one like this that is kind of heart centered and so important to
Yeah,
enjoy doing it.
no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for someone who does have that interest that like would like to start some sort of clinical practice as an herbalist, what do you think are the most important things that they can do to actually set that into motion?
So first and foremost, I guess it depends on the nation you're in, but being part of a registered herbalist guild or association is very useful. In the States and Canada in particular, I guess I can speak about North America. Although it's not mandatory to be part of these organizations and to be registered in order to practice, it really does help beef up your marketability, reputation in the community, and what have you. And anyone that would be coming to a potential herbalist would feel a sense of comfort knowing that you have gone through some sort of rigorous training, as opposed to went from hobbyist to, hey, I'm a professional overnight, which does happen a lot in our craft, in a sense. Yeah, that would be one thing I would definitely consider in terms of just, I suppose, integrating within the herbal community itself and identifying yourself as an actual professional.
Yeah, I think that community aspect is so important. Like there's other people who have been there before, but like, yeah, reaching out and connecting with them and just working together is a really important part of
Yeah.
making it happen. I know that one of the part of actually becoming a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild for people who are based in the US, but I think also worldwide you can become a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild. But is that correct, first of all?
Yeah, because I'm in Canada and so I'm registered in the States. So it's trickier, but you can do it. There are ways definitely around it. There are we definitely have international members. I'm currently on the governing council, so we're trying to work. I'm trying to work into hopefully getting to be a bit more of a voice for the international community and helping facilitate the process to becoming registered herbalist there. So especially with the pandemic going on right now, all eyes are online, and guilds such as the American Herbalist Guild are really shining in this moment. Folks are looking at that for education.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so I think it's good if we can have that international presence and help each other, because there are obviously the regulations are different in different countries and regions and even states throughout the world, but having that body that does kind of help people worldwide is super important. But on the topic of becoming registered as a clinical herbalist, with the American Herbalist Guild, there are certain requirements as far as education and practice hours and mentorship and that sort of thing. Could you run me through kind of what those requirements are and the best way to get those things?
Certainly. So I believe we're kind of working it out right now to update this information. So I guess take it with a grain of salt because it is about to be updated per se. But a part of it is obviously to attain education through. We don't have approved schools per se, but recommended schools. It's not so much just you need to graduate. You have to have a certain amount of clinical hours that you've done as well. And in addition to that, membership into the guild. Again, this is changing right now, but it used to be more so of you have to essentially prove that you're good enough to get in addition, the application process, as opposed to various other associations that I'm aware of. It's not just as simple as I've graduated, I put my name down, let me in. You have to actually make a case for yourself, which I think is pretty nice in that regard and really sets the standard and the benchmark a bit higher. So yeah, in terms of advice on how to I would just literally focus on a good school with perhaps within one of the recommendations on the website of the AHG, and then focus on the clinical hours aspect, which is going to be pretty important.
Yeah, I know. Because I listen to my community and the questions that they have and throughout the year, and a common question that does come up is around that mentorship and finding a mentor, and especially for people who are in more rural or isolated places and not actually having access to other herbalists in their area. Probably they might be the only one in the near area. Is there a way around this that you know of that could help people in this situation?
Yeah, I do a lot of one-on-one training with folks that are in such areas, in the States, in Lebanon, in various parts of the world. And yeah, we get around it through, private tuition, one-on-one with Zoom. Technology right now is making it really easy to do that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I fill in the gaps where I can there, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way around it too. That I would now I would like to talk a little bit about specifically what you do at Urban Apothecary and how you've kind of set up your business and how you run it behind the scenes and that sort of thing. Would you like to give an introduction of how long you've been running for and how you kind of started the business side of that?
Yeah. So I think it's been around 6 years. I've kind of lost track at this point, but it essentially, I set it up, and the whole business model is to facilitate. Initially, it was to have a botanical dispensary for my own practice, so I could reach for everything I needed and know the quality that I've made it at. And I'm fairly well known in my herbal community for having a standard of quality, or most herbs just don't cut it for me. I'm fairly mad like that. So I needed to control all aspects of my production. And then what I did was I blew it up to I wanted to open up the dispensary, which had a lot of rare herbs and preparations to other practitioners who perhaps did not have the, luxury of being in an apothecary essentially to reach for all this stuff. So that was the second, I suppose, business plan per se, where I added an element of it being a botanical pharmacy open globally for practitioners to prescribe through. So you can get naturopaths and herbalists that email me with their prescriptions. I'll fill it up for them and send it to their client, that sort of thing. But in the past, I suppose, year and a half or 2 years, I've focused a lot more on education, moving into training would-be herbalists, already practicing clinical herbalists, and just different levels of things. I'm fairly well known for my East meets West kind of approach, where I have a background in Ayurvedic medicine, Islamic herbal medicine, some Unani stuff, and then just tie it into the West with a bit of a science foundation. So that is something I suppose, really focusing on right now in terms of the brand, really kind of being the dude in the West that has brought Islamic and Arabic medicine to light, essentially. So updating some of the materia medica stuff. That's essentially how I'm spinning myself off right now. And it works because it's naturally where I'm from, and I don't have to learn an exotic language or anything. It's just all there for me. So I suppose that's another piece of advice, like find a niche that you can kind of highlight in your own skill set to resonate in the marketplace, because we're competing with all the naturopaths as well. And, with all due respect to them, we are in a different game. We're the specialists, so it's a different ball game like that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice as far as like getting that niche, that point of difference that sets you apart. And that's kind of what people are going to be looking for, how they want to seek you out as well, like specifically your services. And I think, yeah, yours is perfect as well, because it does like suit your background, and it's obviously something you're interested in as well. Can you, like, I'm actually personally interested in that. So can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy and your approach with that East meets West?
So like the way I approach a clinic, or like, let's say, a new client per se, is like I do have the whole hour and a half or what have you, where I talk to as like a family doctor, differential diagnostics, getting everything about the client from a Western mindset. And the whole time I'm talking to you, I'm observing you from an Eastern mindset, like breath rate, voice, hair, eyes, shape, like all these things about you that you wouldn't think I'm looking at. And then I couple it with like Ayurvedic pulse diagnosis, tongue diagnosis. Where necessary, I'll do urinalysis tests at home, and I've got a lab kit where actually we'll do various tests such as Koenigsberg, urinary chloride tests for like cortisol levels, for example, or what have you. So like Obermeyer test for protein putrefaction. I can really reach from both elements. Like I've got Western stuff, and then I can use pulse and tongue to kind of fill in gaps where necessary. And then in my prescriptions, the prescriptions can vary widely. I tend to treat people depending on their genetics. So if you're more Asian, you're getting more Chinese herbs. If you're more Arabic, you're getting more herbs from your area. And I substitute a lot of endangered, or not so much endangered, invasive plants for endangered ones in formulas, and really try to localize medicine in that sense. So it's kind of very multifaceted. And in the past year and a half, or year rather, I've updated the way I make medicine, and which is what I'm kind of known for right now, in addition to the Arabic thing, is the alchemical approach to medicine making that I do. So a lot of multi-fraction spagyric remedies, which involve a full spectrum of medicine that most herbalists are not used to. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of how I approach things.
So it's kind of like an integration of all of the different systems that you have, that, and then like pulling it all together to make a decision based on all of that.
Basically, because Unani medicine, which is not something I'm totally specialized in, was essentially that a melting pot of everything. So I think of what I do as almost like a 2.0 version of that, like the new Unani, where I'm melting new things into the pot. So
yeah, that's a really nice way of looking at it, isn't it? Like I like that about having a career in herbalism, is that we can kind of be a bit creative and find the way that works for us to actually, that pathway that's different, or like pulling in the parts from here and there to make it all work. And as we gain experience as well, we find out more what works, what doesn't, what we want to follow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a part of the fun, I think. It's definitely part of the journey. I did mention it earlier, but I wanted to bring it up as well now. the way that you present, so on your website, you have like the clinical consultations, and then you have like a menu, which is all the different herbs that you, or the tinctures themselves and things like that that you
Yeah.
offer. Like, can you tell me a little bit about how that works? Because that is different to what I think most herbalists have on
Yeah,
their
so
website.
like my menu, for example, like is very like the whole website and feel is more so tend to be like old school apothecary vintage look, where you really have to kind of look in between to kind of see things. That's what I get complaints usually about how small things are, but it is what it is. I can't really change it at this point. It's like so time consuming. But I basically like it's more so a practitioner's menu, as you can see, especially the first page where it's just like all these Latin names of all these herbs. It's pretty much that. And then the second page where it talks about some salves and oils and a few niche products that I carry, such as like Shilajit or Boswellia capsules or various Ayurvedic oils. That is more like the product section per se, the layman section. I tend to differentiate myself as the practitioner that doesn't have a lot of set products. I make stuff for people. I personalize medicine, and I don't like having like a cold or flu formula or cough syrup or anything like that. I like to make it for the client. And I try to emphasize that in a lot of my teachings too, where I say if 10 people came to me with a cold, I assure you none of them would have the same formula walking out. That just doesn't work that way. And if you're looking to work that way, please go to a health food store and stop wasting my time. That's my approach. I really don't focus on selling so much. I really just try to bring authenticity, and allow that to, navigate the forefront.
Yeah, well, that's really the way it worked in times past. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the fuel that you're portraying with your website as well. So it's all cohesive in the message that you're trying to get across. It's that like healing for the person, and you're making it for the person, and it's
Yeah.
very personalized healing. And that makes sense. And that's for a certain type of person as well. There's people who want that, and there are people who just want that cold and flu remedy, and they're going to go to the health food store.
Yeah.
And that's like
Yeah.
it's a different section.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like I may have focused on that demographic at one point, and if it spills over to me at this point, I'm obviously happy to serve anybody, but I don't dwell on it anymore. I do want the folks that want the symptomatic relief to go elsewhere at this point, because I want to be focused on much more deeper stuff at this point.
Yeah. And so the clients that do come to you are attracted to this message that you have, that the way that you heal your clients. How do they mostly find out about you? Is it your website? Is it word of mouth? Is it social media? How do they find out about you?
Yeah, so most of my clients are word of mouth, referrals, social media. My presence on social media is a bit unique. And that's I guess my personality and style. I stand out more in the things than the way I do things. So that's usually how I get my international clients per se. But the results at the end of the day will get you referrals. They will keep getting you the clients that will keep coming back. It's you can make you can make a list of all these things, but at the end of the day, it's the results that will speak for themselves.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is actually a recurring theme in this conference. Like, if you have like quality, that's
Yeah.
what's gonna speak to the people, and then they're going to talk about it, and that's where it all grows from. And obviously, it is difficult to get those initial clients at the beginning, but once you do have some people, and then just blow them away and do give them results or help them on their journey, it's then that's going to help you going forward as well as a business owner. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's harder now to start up and do it than it was even like 5 years ago when I started, because more, especially right now with the way the world is, a lot more people are into natural health than it ever was. So it's really you really have to stand up. Like every herbalist right now that's practicing for a while has to essentially like step it up and differentiate from the new pack that's coming in the sense that we let the experience essentially show. And a lot of there's a lot of really good marketing out there right now, and that's what I'm trying to say. And in terms of I guess what I'm trying to say is experience may be difficult to sometimes weed through all that.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Like, the marketing side of things is overwhelming online and stuff at the moment. There's just like so much stuff, and it's difficult to find out where the substance is, because some people are just good at marketing, some people have
Right.
behind the scenes better, and like it's just yeah, kind of learning how to market yourself so that your good substance gets out there. That's like the
No,
key,
absolutely.
really. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. I wanted to ask a little bit more detail as well. Before, you mentioned your apothecary and your dispensary that you have, and how you, yeah, I really value having those high quality herbs, and that's sounds like you have a lot of control, or your fingers in all of the pots there as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you run that, or how you choose what to put into your dispensary, and yeah, how that works?
So I tend to work with, I've got like, most folks tend to just stick with one or two large suppliers that are organic and fair trade and call it a day, and that works. You'll get your results. You'll be fine. I'm more of the person, again, that's a bit more OCD. I'll go to that one herbalist or that one farmer because he grows that one herb best, and move on. So I gotta say, I've got like over 70 different suppliers depending on what I'm choosing. Yeah, like one person I probably go to for just like two herbs because I know he or she does them well, and then the rest are not that great. So um, trial and error over time, I suppose, for me, at tasting, smelling, and that sort of thing, is how I essentially got to the point I am with the herb quality.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point, as far as like finding the best source for each individual herb, because of like, yeah, even one farm, even if it's a really good farm, it's not good at everything. And I mean, there's different growing areas, there's
Yeah.
everyone has their different strengths. And like that's a really good point. I know I've like, not in terms of herbs particularly, but I've really experienced that when I moved to Italy.
Yeah.
Just that it was part of the culture here to, like, instead of going to a supermarket, go to like 20 different stores to get the
Yeah.
bread from there, the milk from there, the like the
Yeah.
tomatoes from there, like each thing from somewhere different. And so like the shopping takes so much longer, but
Yeah.
the quality of the ingredients is higher. But it was just like a really big difference to how I
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
done shopping.
Yeah. It's essentially that. Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Absolutely.
Yeah, but and that's what you're doing with your herbs. And so if I can see the difference in the way that the food, how it tastes, you can see what a difference that would make in the quality of the prescriptions that you offer as well, because of like each
Absolutely.
one has that smell, that the look, or the, all of those factors that we have to see the
Right.
vibrancy of the herbs. And that's
Yeah.
what, yeah, your dispensary would be oozing with that stuff.
No, absolutely. And like again, it used to be more so just the quality of the herbs, and then at one point I was just trained to make herbal tinctures and extracts a certain way, and then with the experience and time right now, it's the process of processing the herbs as well. So a lot of the processes I've been doing and have been learning and experimenting with are fairly unique. I'd say there's less than five people probably in my country at least that are doing some of the stuff I'm doing. So it's very interesting to push the envelope in terms of, okay, we've got the best herbs. Were we actually making in the right way the whole time? Yes, empirically we got results, but can they be better? And so it's almost like taking like, for example, I've got like a Valerian that I've gotten to like 6 different versions right now, and each one does something different. So you can actually exponentially start to split out herbs and multiply out medicine. And this works a lot really, really well when you're thinking of ethicality and sustainability and what have you. So that it's that kind of level that I speak of, basically, in terms of really getting to the depth of medicine.
Yeah. And that's like where the fun starts as well, like those
Yeah.
scientific experiments where you start to see those different, yeah, those little tweaks, and how and what sort of changes they make. And that's the scientific side of me kind of
Yeah, yeah,
comes out of it,
absolutely.
and it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the Valerian. What can you give a little bit more detail about what your experiment is there?
Yeah, like I mean, I've got the traditional 70% 1 to 5, which most folks are familiar with. That's the Valerian everyone knows. And then I did a multi-fraction extract where I did essentially a decoction of the Valerian as opposed to the water portion, 30% decoction and then 70% ethanol. And then that was one version. And then I did a spagyric one where I had like a 20% fraction and then a pure ethanol fraction. I put that together. And then there was another fraction that was 45 and 100. And they all acted differently when you consume them. Like one of them was no longer a sleepy herb. Like it was so mild. I removed essentially the main constituents, the valerianic acid and what have you. that it was almost like a mild California poppy thing that could be used during the daytime. And then another one was more of like extreme sledgehammer. Another one seemed to work really well alongside blood pressure herbs without having the dopiness effect and the anxiety effect. So it's really interesting to kind of split up medicine this way. And that's part of what I'm trying to teach as well, especially for folks that are in rural areas or like inaccessible areas where they just have a handful of herbs. Like, how can you use those 5 and actually make them into 20, essentially, right?
Yeah, and I really resonate with that. Like, I think it's a lot more useful to know a few herbs really
Yeah,
well than just have all of these herbs in your cabinet but not know how to use them. Like, we need to be masters of those few herbs, and like ideally the ones that grow around are the ones we have the best
yeah,
access to.
yeah.
But the like, oh yeah, that you can get from suppliers that are good, that like having those really high quality herbs and just knowing how to use them in different ways, and that's like the beauty of it,
It
definitely.
really is. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, cool. That like that sounds really interesting. Just the experiments there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's gone from like mason jars to a full-blown laboratory with like a lot of high-end equipment. So that's kind of the shift. It's very interesting to see medicine making in my realm of things, while I still hold on to tradition, truly reaching out into the realms of biochemistry and chemistry per se, and alchemy in this sense, and combining them together. Which connects back to my Islamic roots, which that's where all the distillation processes and what have you began in the Middle East, right? So it's like connecting back to that, using the old texts again to guide what I already know.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, how it all comes together.
Yeah.
Have you had to make like significant upgrades to the systems and your like, as in like the rooms that you use? Obviously, you mentioned the cabinet at the beginning, that when you upgraded the cabinet, that was when you were getting serious. But
Yeah,
like, as far as space, have you made big upgrades?
absolutely. And it continues to expand and expand, and I don't know how I'm making space as we speak, but Tetris skills are very important if you're getting to be an herbalist. Yeah, definitely lots of expansion. Like, I never thought I'd be at the point where I'm essentially making various extracts where I'm fermenting the own plant to get its own ethanol out to use for its own tincture. So like, yeah, there's room for fermenting now. There's room for burning things. There's a kiln. There's equipment I never thought I'd have. So yeah, always like it's a good idea when doing anything like this to keep a extra room for stuff as it grows. Don't visualize it as, oh, okay, it's all going to fit this way. Within a month, it's not, sort of thing. So, and this is the case for everybody that does this.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Storage is a huge problem. I think that's one of my favorite quotes so far, is that like one of the most important skills to have as an herbalist is Tetris skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Just being able to store it all, because I think we can all relate to that, just having like cupboards full of jars and the kitchen filling up, and then the next room, and then yeah, everyone else in the family going, what are all these jars?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, all over the place.
yeah.
So
I mean, I'm. Yeah,
okay.
go ahead, sir.
No, go for it.
I was just gonna say my jars aren't even labeled, so my assistant hates me. It's just I just know them by smell and look, and she's just like, "Can you please label?" So it can get pretty nasty.
Wow. Yep. That's definitely like next level. I definitely need to label mine.
Yeah, no.
Mine, I have those mystery jars that I'm like, I'm not actually sure what they are. And
Yeah.
I need your smell to be able to identify them, probably. No. So I wanted to bring it back now to like really, I guess your top tips that you would offer to someone who wants to be a clinical herbalist. So if, yeah, for someone who is starting out now or has a small practice and is trying to grow, what do you think are the most important things that they should focus on going forward?
Certainly. So I would say focus on finding your unique voice, to resonate through the internet and world noise that is the healthcare world right now. Focus on quality, focus on individuality in that sense. Continual education all the time, every time. Never fall into the trap of, even if you're successful and have clients and you're doing well, don't fall into that comfort trap of, okay, I'm getting results, I don't have to crack the books. Continually challenge yourself. And that will help you stay ahead of the pack, or stay afloat rather. And yeah, I would say keep ethicality at the forefront of your business, because it goes hand in hand with botanical medicine and just the whole field in general, and will help to sustain the craft, because a lot of our more popular botanicals right now are at risk, like slippery elm, stuff like that, that everyone's kind of used to using or going. So, and one more important thing I would like to state, and this is something I try to educate a lot, is stay ahead of the pack in terms of what are the invasives and how can we use them medicinally. Try to preference them as much as possible. Not only are you going to help your own ecology in that way, but you're going to have a sustainable source of medicinals that most people avoid. So that's something I focus on a lot. I have a lot of invasives, like purple loosestrife, for example, a terrible invasive here, that I use kind of like eyebright. And eyebright is the endangered herb that everyone should be avoiding right now. So that is automatically something I do. If they ask me for eyebright, I say no, I have purple loosestrife, and I'll start to educate about it. So purple loosestrife in many dispensaries and in a couple of herbal colleges in Canada right now is being used as opposed to eyebright. So I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, that is a really good point, because of like the people ask for specific things, but like as herbalists, we can provide that education around like, yeah, this is actually an endangered plant, but there are these other options that have a similar effects. And just that education is a key part of that role, because yeah, just because they hear about something in the media doesn't mean it's the only thing that they can have. And there are different options. And so like, that's a huge part of our role.
Yeah, I see that a trap. I mean, I get it with practitioners, herbalists, and naturopaths alike that'll sometimes ask me for formulas, and then you don't have or recommend a one herb that it shouldn't be like. For example, like, oh, okay, here's a formula with eyebright. You say I don't have eyebright because X and X and X, but I can recommend, a purple loosestrife. In this case, many of the times I would have a reaction where the entire formula is canceled. No, 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 I can't do it without the eyebright. So there's that understanding that needs to be reassembled in the craft, where it's not a static craft, it's about synergy of constituents and empirical historical knowledge. So reconnecting, basically stay connected to the craft is the point of it, basically.
Yeah, staying connected, that's a great phrase there, just because that's why we're all in this, like because we like working with the plants. And so yeah, just keeping that connection and that why is important, and then just like helping people with the plants is the the key there. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. If people want to find out more about what you do and urban apothecary, and as yourself as an herbalist, where are the best places for them to find out more?
Certainly. So there's my website, which has a few blog posts, which I need to update soon. There's a mailing list there you can sign up for to get like updates on my workshops and what have you. I'm usually quite active on like Facebook and Instagram. So if you catch me there, you can add my personal account. I'm easy to find, or the Urban Apothecary is easy to find there. And if you find me on Facebook, you'll find my Instagram links, which are also on my website. I've got the personal one, Talal Herbalist, and the Urban Apothecary one. So like if you're following me on these platforms, you'll generally be quite updated as to what's going on in my educational offerings coming up. I'm focusing in the next few months to try to bring practitioner level education to help with enhancing, or rather adding more colors to the palette that is the Western materia medica, moving away from the obsession that is perhaps strictly, Chinese and Indian herbs, and let's just say, what about the African and Arabic herbs that are in some cases quite sustainable, quite affordable, and ignored, removing, the stigma, the religious and cultural stigma that is essentially a big barrier in the West to accessing such medicine. The response has been really, really great thus far. Like what I'm seeing is folks saying, finally, we get to hear somebody talk about this stuff that, was essentially pushed into the background or politically incorrect to talk about or what have you. So I think it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what sort of classes do you teach? Can you give an example of the types of classes that people could possibly take with you?
Yeah. So some like literally all levels. So I've got like I do introductions to like Islamic medicine, introduction to Unani medicine. I can get into in depth as well as the protocols and using each of the systems. I've taught a class last year about autoimmunity, how to treat autoimmune clients in the COVID-19 era, which was fairly technical, but it was quite nice. I've taught classes on male reproductive health, basically, which is something that is not quite well known in the herbal community. I tend to focus on topics that are quite ignored or considered, I guess, harder to do per se, except for obviously the Islamic stuff I do. I really tried to bring more confidence in herbalists to reach a bit more further than the cold and flu, if that makes sense. Like really get into the autoimmune and understanding them, really bridging into oncology, which is something I've kind of started to focus on in the past few months. And in my case right now, we're trying to accelerate and update what medicine making is in the Western herbal community, and bringing an understanding that we are lacking quite a lot of things in terms of the medicine we're doing. We're getting results, but there just can be something else.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much further we can go there. And I think it's also really useful that you've done some classes on like herbalism for male health as well, because of there's so much out there for females. And I mean, in general, the herbal field is more populated with females than males, but like there is a lack of information like for males, and it's good to balance that up. I think in both sides we're kind of like sexist in the opposite direction, or like there's just a lot more females in the herbal field, I would say.
Absolutely. Like you take 99% of herbalists, we can do a talk on the spot about female reproductive health, but start talking about males and we have a sentence to say and we're like zinc. And then we're done. So yeah, it's a lot more than that, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So I think it's just good to focus on those, or like identify those areas that are not done as much, which you said earlier as well around that niche. So you often focus on those parts that are not as well done, and then you have less competition, and like you also have a bigger impact as well. You're not just repeating what someone else has said. You're like, bringing new content and new life to areas that are less explored in herbalism, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. And I suppose one last tip I always forget to say this, but the lifestyle and diet element must always be in the forefront of everything you're doing. So keep that in mind. I would be a clinical practitioner. It is very easy to fall into the allure of herbs because they work, but it's important to never get distracted by the symptomatic relief that we may be giving, and to really focus on the cause of things. And I was just moderating a post on a advanced herbal science group just before hopping on this call, where someone was asking about hair loss, and all these recommendations came in, and I was just like, what is the cause? Like nobody even asked about the cause. So that's what I'm trying to get at. And these were really good experienced herbalists, and no disrespect to any of them, but we can lose focus sometimes. We're just like, oh yeah, you can lose, but it's just like, why though? And then they all just kind of clicked and they're like, he's right, we didn't even ask why. So keep that in the forefront. Yeah, cause.
Yes. Yeah, that is so important. Like that whole holistic model, and then working it. Yeah, because if you don't work with the cause, like you can chuck anything at it, and it's not really going to address the underlying problem. And that's the first thing we should be thinking about, like with anyone who comes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's basically unconditioning Western medical programming, which is if symptoms are relieved, the patient is cured. Whilst in the holistic realm of things, it's the cause that must be uprooted. So it's still a work in progress, definitely.